Good morning. So what was the favorite cookout item?
Hot dogs.
Hot dogs, mac and cheese, Smokies,
Marshmallows.
marshmallows. All right, good participation. Way to go. So it's good to be with you all today. Happy Memorial Day weekend. So today we are going through our identity crisis series, and we are talking about labels today. And last week, I was sitting in the very back area there, and it was interesting. Eric made this statement. He said, when we don't know our identity in Christ, there are plenty of other people who will tell us who we are, who will give us labels, right? And when he made that statement, everybody's head just started nodding, like, oh yeah, been there, done that. Like, nobody really likes to be labeled. And yet we do it all the time, right? We do this for several reasons. Scientists believe that we do this first and foremost as a survival mechanism. Like, we are judging, snap judgment, is the person in front of me, are you safe? The second reason scientists believe that we do this is because we build off what we already know. And so we categorize things as we run into it. So we're building off, we're understanding who you are, so I'm going to make this snap judgment really fast on who I think that you are. And so we label people. And as much as we hate it, we all do it. And I want you to take a moment with me, because I believe some of the stickiest times where labels just have a way of being with us for a very, very long time is when we were in middle school and high school. Like, that's the epitome, right, of just constant labels back and forth and back and forth. And so whether that was last week or whether it was 50 years ago, I want you to take a moment and remember a label that you have been given when you were in middle school or high school, okay? So take a moment. You got that label? By a thumbs up, how many would say that was a positive label that you received? Okay, there's a few. What about those of you who remembered the negative label? Give me a thumbs down. Yeah, those darn negative ones. I tell you what, they definitely have a way of sticking with us longer. And so my daughter, Izzy, my youngest daughter, said that she'd be willing to help me out today. So go ahead and come up here, Izzy. Can you give her a hand, please? Izzy is kind of, I'm going to push you up front here a little bit more. There you go. Izzy's kind of right in the middle of this really super sticky phase. And she's a ninth grader. And I asked her if she would be willing to give me 4 labels that people have given her that are good and 4 labels that people that have given her that are bad. And you can see by her cool jacket, I made her wear this too. The black side, this is like the negative, the dark side labels. And then over here, we have the good labels that she's been given. And so I'm going to read down this list. People have told Izzy, you are smart, you are pretty, you are kind, and you're a good gymnast. And I would agree with all those. Look at her. Yay, Izzy. Okay, on this negative side, people have told you that you are loud, that you can be annoying. That was probably from a sibling, by the way. That you are messy. I probably gave her that, but look at already, she's kind of messy. But that's okay, she's so pretty. And this last one here, I'm going to disagree with as a negative, but it's been told to her in a negative sense that she is a ginger or a redhead. But look at that red hair. Like, people can pay good money for that hair right there. So thanks, Iz, for... No, you get to stay right here. Don't go anywhere. Okay, so the problem with our labels, as much as we hate them, there's something inside of us that still craves them. And so when we get these labels over here on the good side, we like that, right? That it feels good to be noticed. It feels good to have these words being spoken over you. The problem is that when they become part of our identity. And what I mean by that is when we look at Izzy's nice words here, I'm going to take this bottom one, that she's a good gymnast. Izzy, how many good gymnasts do you know that are 40 years old? None. Not too many 40-year-old gymnasts out there. So when this becomes your identity and it becomes what you are known as, then what happens when that goes away? Whether that's, God forbid, through an injury, or maybe she just decides at some point she just doesn't want to do gymnastics anymore. And then all of a sudden, the thing that you're known for and that you're really good at and that people give you all the accolades for is stripped away. And you feel unseen and unnoticed. And maybe you just feel like, well, then what's my point? What's the purpose? And then we go over here to these negative labels. And we say, do you know what? I don't want to be any one of these anymore. And so maybe she chooses annoying. She's like, I don't want to be called annoying. That's a terrible label. And so Izzy, who is so gregarious and full of life and full of joy, all of a sudden she's going to make that decision. I'm not going to be known as being annoying anymore. So what's she going to do instead? She's going to shrink herself a little bit smaller. Her personality is going to get a little bit smaller and smaller because she doesn't want to be seen as this. Or maybe she's trying so hard not to be messy anymore. But no matter what, it's like it just happens over and over and over. She puts a system in place and it still doesn't happen. She's still messy. And she gets to this spot where she's like, you know what? I've spent a life trying to tell myself that I'm not. This is just who I am. It becomes almost an excuse. Like you can't change me because this is who I am. It's my identity. And all of these things, like all of the labels, although they might be a snapshot of who Izzy is, they are so flat and they're so one-dimensional. They are definitely not. Even if all 8 of them together combined, Izzy is so much more complex, and there's so much more amazing things about her, the potential that's inside of her. I can't even begin to understand what can come out of her. And yet, we decide to live our life based on our labels. We choose our friends based on our labels, all of our behaviors based on these labels that make us so much smaller. So what I want to do as a mom, when I hear these words spoken over my daughter, like I just want to rip them all off. Like don't live into these. Like God has something so much infinitely more better for you than what's on your sleeve right now. And I feel like that's the invitation for every one of us, is that God looks at us in the same way and is like, you are living so small right now. Let's strip off those labels. Thanks, Iz. Thanks for being up here. Today we're going to be talking about a man in the Bible named Jacob. And Jacob, he got a pretty intense label on him right out of the gate. He got named by his mother, and he was named Jacob, which means deceiver, one who usurps, one who takes something that is not yours, or to outwit somebody, or that deceiver feeling. So, but if your name is Jacob, I'm sure you're a really great man, by the way, out there. But in Bible times, like you named for a very specific purpose. And so this label was placed on Jacob at a very, very young age. And Jacob was unique in the sense that his grandpa had this insane promise by God himself that said that I will bless all of humanity through your bloodline. Okay, so he's heard this story about Grandpa getting blessed by God, and he believes it. He knows it to be true, and he's like, I really, really, really ridiculously want that blessing. Not only did he want the blessing, but he also wanted the birthright. And the birthright is given to the firstborn son, and it's a double portion of the inheritance. So the firstborn son gets 2 times whatever the rest of everybody else gets. And so Jacob is like, I really want that blessing, and I really, really want that birthright. The problem is, I'm the secondborn son. But, you see, I've got this label that I've been given that I'm a deceiver and that I can outwit, and I can probably manipulate this situation any way that I want because that's my label and that is who I am. And so, Jacob's story is found in the book of Genesis. It's a longer story. You can check out all the details in that, but today I'm going to give you the bigger overview of this. So Jacob goes about deceiving his brother to get the birthright. And he does a great job with that, and he ends up getting the birthright in exchange for a bowl of lentils, of all things. So Jacob deceives his brother. After he's done deceiving his brother for the birthright, he then is a super classy guy because he goes on to deceive his blind father to get the blessing. And he does this by pretending that he's Esau. So Jacob deceives his blind father. So he's deceived his brother, he's deceived his father. And now you can imagine when dad and brother discover what Jacob has done, can you imagine how happy they are with him? No, needless to say, they are so angry. Dad is super furious. But brother is ready to kill Jacob. Mom actually overhears Esau talking, and he says, I'm going to kill him. And mom's like, not on my watch. Instead, Jacob, go and run to Uncle Laban's house, and he will take care of you. So this is what Jacob does. He deceives, and then he runs away to his Uncle Laban's house. However, Jacob meets his match. Laban, who is his uncle, is like 3 times the deceiver that Jacob is. And so he sees that Jacob has fallen in love with one of his daughters, which, yes, would technically be his cousin, but this is Bible time, so stick with me. So he falls madly in love with his cousin, and Laban tricks him into marrying a different cousin, and then is like, well, but you can work a little bit longer and get the one you really want. And so Jacob is so mad at this point because he's like, I'm the one who's supposed to come out on top. I'm the one who outwits. I'm the one who strategizes. I'm the one who figures this out because I am the deceiver, not you. And so, okay, you want me to work for you? I'll work for you. And he's like, fool me once, but fool me twice. And so he ends up working for his uncle. And during this time, they make this whole deal that he gets a certain amount of goats and sheep, and it's a whole thing. And so what ends up happening is that Laban's whole flocks kind of stay the same amount. The flocks don't grow. However, the ones that Jacob have been promised keep getting more and more and more and more. And so Jacob is getting richer and richer and richer at the expense of Laban, who's just kind of meh. And so Laban deceives Jacob, but then Jacob's like, I'm going to deceive you. And then he sees that same anger that showed up on dad and brother's face a while ago is now on Laban's face. And so he's going, well, now it's my time too. What's the pattern? Deceive, deceive, run away. Deceive, deceive, run away. So Jacob does what Jacob does. And he gets all of his wives. At this point, he now has 4. All of his wives and all of his kids and the sheep and the goats and whatever other barnyard animals he has, and he runs away. How fast can you run when you have all these things in tow? And I would imagine you don't have to be a great tracker to be able to watch the footprints. However, he runs away. And so here he is, and he's going, okay, by the world's standards, he's got pretty much everything taken care of. You know, he's a make it happen sort of a guy, the self-made man. You can't really fault him for that. You know, he knows how to do it. He gets things done, and he's very successful. He's got wives, he's got kids, he's got goats and sheep and all the things. But he doesn't have a place to rest his head, and he doesn't have a place to call home. There's no peace in Jacob's life because everything about Jacob, when you surround yourself with deceit, everything in life is going to be a struggle. He wrestles with his relationships. He wrestles in his environment with the world around him, and eventually he's going to wrestle with God. And so he's got all of these in tow, and they're in this big caravan, and he's like, okay, well now, where do I go? You know, you can't really take up a small piece of land. People are going to notice I have an entire town behind me practically. And so the only solution that he can come up with is at this point, it's been 20 years since he's seen his brother Esau. And so he's like, well, maybe, just maybe, he will have forgotten by then. You know, he's always a little bit slow in the head anyway. He gave me his birthright for a bowl of lentils. So, you know, he's like, so maybe he's forgotten. And I know I can figure this out. I can strategize this. I can manipulate the situation. I can let him know that I'm super rich now and that I have all sorts of gifts for him. And so that's what I'm going to do. That's the plan. And he sends a messenger on ahead of him to tell Esau to let him know, hey, your brother's on the way. He's super rich and wants to give you gifts. And so naturally, Esau is going to be super excited to see him. So he's waiting for Esau to come back, waiting for the messenger to come back, and he finally hears from the messenger. And he comes running back. He's like, yeah. So I told Esau that you're coming with all sorts of gifts. He's like, yeah. Did you tell him about how rich I was? Yeah. I told him that. He's on his way to meet you. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, he's got 400 men with him. And I can imagine Jacob being a little bit taken back in this spot, 400, you told him I have wives and kids, right? And goats? Like, that's what I've got with me. Why would you need 400 men? The only reason you need 400 men is if you're expecting a slaughter. And so at this point, Jacob is still strategizing, and he can see that he has defeat on the horizon. However, he also is wondering, like, how can I cut my losses, hedge my bets as much as I can, and get the most minimal amount of losses possible? So this is to the extent of which he begins strategizing. He's like, okay, so I'm going to split my group in half, and I'm going to send one group ahead and hope that the men just kill all of them, and then maybe the second group can get away. And there's a couple of wives who have been like super naggy lately, and some kids that have really gotten under my skin. So I'm going to send them on ahead first, and then my favorites, like, they're going to stay behind, and hopefully they'll be able to get away. Like, this is a level of that he's just constantly moving, and you can just see the wheels turning in his head, like, as you read through his story. And this is where we pick up the story in Genesis chapter 32. During the night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 servant wives, and his 11 sons and crossed the Jabbok River with them. After taking them to the other side, he sent over all of his possessions. This left Jacob all alone in the camp, and a man came and wrestled with him until the dawn began to break. When the man saw that he would not win the match, remember that he would not win the match, he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it out of socket. Then the man said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." "What is your name?" the man asked, and he replied, "Jacob." "Your name will no longer be Jacob," the man told him. "From now on you will be called Israel, because you have fought with God and with men and have won." "Please tell me your name," Jacob said. "Why do you want to know my name?" the man replied. Then he blessed Jacob there, and Jacob named the place Peniel, which means face of God. For he said, "I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared." The sun was rising as Jacob left Peniel and was limping because of the injury to his hip. Even today, the people of Israel don't eat the tendon near the hip socket because of what happened that night when the man strained the tendon of Jacob's hip. And I've got to be honest with you, like, this particular story has always baffled me. Because when you look at the story of the Bible, the Old Testament is all about preparing the way for Jesus to come in the New Testament. And when we see the interactions of man and God together, that we are told that man or humans couldn't even look at the face of God without dying. And yet here we have Jacob who wrestled with God face to face. I was like, okay, I don't know if I get that. And not only that, I don't really understand how the man realized that he wasn't going to win against Jacob. Like, if that's God, what? Like, it just was a little confusing to me. But the more I researched it, I came to what some scholars believe are called Christophanies. And a Christophany simply means an appearance of Jesus. And so we believe that even though Jesus showed up in the New Testament, that he was with God from the beginning. And we see Christophanies happening throughout the Old Testament. And an example of this is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. When there are 3 Israelite men who were told to bow before an idol, and they're like, nope, we're not going to do that. Our God doesn't want us to do that. So they throw them into the fiery furnace, and the king's like looking in the fiery furnace, and he's like, didn't we throw 3 in there? Why is there 4, and why does one look like the Son of God? Scholars believe that was a Christophany, like Jesus showing up. In the same way, okay, check out like how this adds up, right? Because the Godhead, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, who is God the man? Jesus. Jesus is God the man. And when Jesus comes to earth, he has human limitations placed on him. This means he gets hungry. This means he gets thirsty. This means that he gets tired. So if he's wrestling with somebody, the other man could actually win. However, Jesus has a little something else up his sleeve, right? He's got the God thing. So he's like, let me just remind you who I am and just give you a little taparoo here on this hip socket. And And that is just so like Jesus. Because when we come into contact with who he truly is face to face, we experience this radical grace. That the things that have always worked for us in the past, the deceit, the running away, he's like, not anymore. I'm going to touch that area right there because what's worked for you in the past of doing this on your own isn't going to work for you anymore. And not only that, but I see you, Jacob. I see you. I see that where you have accepted this label, you have lived smaller than yourself. You have said, it's okay for me to be the deceiver. And I'm telling you, instead of being the deceiver, come and accept your new identity of one who wrestles with God. Because when you wrestle with me, Jacob, when you come in contact with me, you see me for who I really am. And not only that, but then you understand who you are and who you are made to be. Because that's what his grace looks like. And so as I'm pondering through this and I'm thinking about this, I love several things about this. I love the fact that God doesn't want just yes men and yes women who are just like, I'll do whatever you want me to do. He wants us to wrestle with him. Actually, Izzy, who is standing up on stage here, her whole name is Israel because we want her to wrestle with God. Because when you wrestle, you come in contact with the living God. And so I'm preparing this talk, and I'm like, okay, God, I see where Jacob lived into a label his entire life that wasn't what he should be living into. I get that. Like, where in my life am I striving? What label have I accepted that I don't even know about, that I haven't even really thought about? I was like, do I have one? And sure enough, I do. He showed me the one that I have placed as a good label. It falls on that white side over here is a good label. Somewhere along the line, somebody told me that I was capable or high capacity or able to get things done, that sort of thing. And so in my mind, I'm like, I like that. I like this label, and so I'm going to do my darndest to keep it. And so that means that I'm going to accept an invitation to do things only if I know I'm good at them. And I'm going to try really hard, and I'm going to do all the things and make sure that this particular thing happens. And all of a sudden, my behaviors change, my relationships change, even my prayer life, like how I'm talking with God. It's like, I have so many things I've got to get done, God. Come along with me. We've got things to do. And it's just like this constant go, 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 go. He's like, so that's the label that you have bought into. I'm like, ah. And so I hear this invitation from him of like, just come and be with me. Just come and be. Go for a walk with me. So I'm like, okay, we can go for a walk. It's like 6 a.m, and I'm like, I need to get my 10,000 steps in anyway, and I've got a few things for us to work on, so come on, God. And he's like, no, just be. Like, stop. Stop trying to accomplish things. Stop trying to get things done. Just be with me. So I'm like, okay, we'll just walk. And I'm like walking. I can do this. And it feels quiet like that too. And I'm like, feels awfully quiet. God, do you have something to say? And eventually I hear this question just pressed on me. And it was just like, what makes you want to be with someone? And I'm like, well, like, what do you mean? Like, what kind of, like, anyone. Like, anyone. What makes you want to be with anyone? Just by choice. I'm like, well, okay. I like being with people who I can feel I can truly be myself around. That I can just let my guard down, that there's like a safety there, that I can be goofy. I don't have to have it all together all the time. And I really, really like people who are funny and have a good sense of humor. I want to be around people like that. And he's like, okay, that's good. And then it was like this 3 questions in a row that I felt he put on my heart. And the first one was, do you want to be around somebody who only wants you to solve their problems? Like, by choice. I understand some in the profession, like, sometimes, but, like, at the end of the day, like, you have free time, do you want to just be around somebody who only wants you to solve their problems all the time? And then they leave as soon as they're done. Well, no, not exactly. And what about, do you want to be around somebody who only talks about themselves? That's it. That's all you get. I'm like, no. Seeing where he's going with this one, though. And then the last question, give me a hint. That's it. Do you want to be around somebody who only, like you feel that no matter what, they just want you to be a little bit better? Like how often do I feel that way with God? I just feel like if only I just could get it together a little bit more, I probably should be fasting a little bit more, or be praying, or doing just like, I should be doing something differently. I'm like, ugh. And so when he asks me these 3 questions, I'm like, no, I don't want to be with people that make me feel this way. He's like, then why do you do that with me? He's like, you think that this is what I'm made of. You put these labels on me, and sure enough, like I've become so good at making labels for people and for things around me that I realized I actually have been labeling God. And the problem with labels is they are flat and they are one-dimensional. And not only that, but half the time they are just wrong altogether. And so I feel like, okay, God, I'm going to put some good labels on you over here, like you're a great problem solver and you're a really good listener, like way to go, God. And over here, I do have to say, God, like you are a little judgmental sometimes. And back to that funny thing, like I sometimes, like, God, you're probably pretty serious, like up there with your white beard, just thinking stuff all day, listening to me, my problems. But that's not the case, right? That's such a small, small piece of God. And when we come into contact with God, and when we're willing to rest and just simply be with God, he's like, just be curious about me. Like he's like, Alyssa, do you understand that I am the creator of the universe? I have been there from the very, very beginning of time. There's a reason why they call me the Alpha. And I have been, and I've seen all the way through the very end. There's a reason why they call me the Omega, the beginning and the end. I've seen it all. I've seen humanity throughout the entire time. I've created everything that you see in the heavens and on earth. What do you want to ask me? Do you really just want to talk about you right now? Do you really just want to talk about your problems? Because guess what? I'm a pretty rad God. I've got amazing things to be able to share with you. Be curious about me. Because when you're curious about me, he's like, I can take those labels and I can flick them off like nobody's business. He's like, for example, let me take this one that says that I'm a serious God. Alyssa, do you remember that you were created in my image and that all of humanity is created in my image? And do you know that there's some really, really funny people out there? They've got nothing on me. I invented humor. And I'm like, which makes me wonder, like, what's God's sense of humor like? It's got to be phenomenal. And so now I feel like this really amazing invitation that God has given me that says, Alyssa, I want you to engage with me just like you would any other relationship. Because when I meet somebody, I want to know, like, where are you from? What brought you here? What things do you like? What do you dislike? Like, what's kind of shaped you? Like, why not ask God these things? And it's been such a cool experience. And I just feel like, although I still have my share of my problems and things that we need to work through and that he gets to listen to me on, when I go for my walks in the morning, and this 1 hour, I'm like, God, I want to reserve that just for being with you and just having a true friendship with God. Like, how cool is that we have a God who wants us to be in contact with him like that? Because it's out of that place that everything else flows. And even in this moment, like, I'm asking God, okay, God, well, we're going through this series on identity. And God, I realize all the labels that I have, and I want to please help me take these off. I don't want them anymore. So what label do you have for me? What's my identity with you? And the word that came back was daughter. And I've got to be honest, when he told me that, I was like, well, I know. I know. I've heard that before. I'm like, yeah, I get that, yeah. But like, what do you really want to tell me, God? He's like, no, you're my daughter. Like, ponder that. And I just think about that with my kids, like Izzy up here on stage or any one of them. When it comes to them asking for something from me, yes, I'm going to meet that. But when we're in the middle of the boring part of our relationship, where we're working out the details of rides and pickups and whatever, that's where relationship is born. It's in the boring, it's in the mundane, it's in the everyday to day. And God wants to be with us in the boring and in the day-to-day and in the laughter and the little jokes, all of it. He wants to be a part of it through. And it's from this place that he does what only he can do, and he gets to take over and be at the wheel. So when we go back to our friend Jacob, he wrestled all night with this man. And when we wrestle like that, in the morning, the reality is that Jacob still has Esau coming with 400 of his men. And he's like, well, what I really like to do is run away, but I can't. I can't do what I've always done, so God, what am I going to do? And he's like, I got this one. Let me do what only I can do. This is what I've been trying to get your attention on your entire life, Jacob. Let me do what I do. And so sure enough, that we see in the next chapter, Esau coming. And Esau comes running towards his brother. He throws his arm around his brother and he kisses his brother's neck. And he says, welcome home. He's like, you are my brother. And he's like, I've got your goats, I've got your chickens, I got your stuff over here. He's like, I don't care about that. My brother is home. God does what only God can do when we allow him into this space of just being in his presence. Like, how profound is that? And I just love that. And so I just want to extend the invitation to you guys. Have a couple of reflection questions for you. If you don't mind just taking a moment and just bowing your head and just closing your eyes as I go through these. What are some labels in your life that have caused you to live small? What are some labels that you've placed on God that he's just waiting to be able to talk to you about? Where is God inviting you to either wrestle or to rest with him? And then the last one is, who does he say that I am? God, we know that you don't want just yes men and yes women doing all the things just because we're supposed to. But God, you want our authentic self, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And you see where we have all these labels, not just down our sleeves, but all over our entire selves that we have embraced, that we've repelled, that we've done just everything in our existence to try to either keep or to throw off. And I just pray, God, that you would do what only your Spirit does and that you would just take those away. It can be very vulnerable and it can be very exposing, God, because all of a sudden those labels that cover us are just gone. But instead, I just pray that you would replace that with your presence, that you would replace it with the words of identity that you want to speak over each one of us. So God, I pray for every heartbeat in this place today, that as we leave, that we would make time to be with you, to wrestle with you, to truly be in contact with you and experience you in an incredible new way. Lord, change us. May we be like you in all ways, God. And we love you in your name. Amen. So when you came in, you see there's these "Hello, my name is" stickers on your seat. Check your back. You might have a "Kick Me" sticker if you can't find it. I want you to take that sticker with you this week. Spend some time just wrestling or resting with God and asking him, what is my name? Who is it that you say I am? And then Cedar Hills, go out and live in the identity that he has called you to this week. Have a fantastic 3-day week, guys.